Hey guys, Jonathan at Marshall Custom Models here. I've had a few requests on some of my lighting arrays and what different types of LEDs that I use. So on some of my models I have to use surface mounted diodes, this SMDs, and these ones in particular are 0805. They are extremely small, as you can see by my index finger, just about how small they are. Because of how small they are, they can be rather temperamental when it comes to soldering them. If you apply too much heat, you can blow them or damage them to where they will blow much sooner than they're supposed to, or you could not put enough heat, not get a good enough joint, and still not work as long as it should. So I'm going to show you guys a technique that I have discovered that I think works very well. I use it on all my surface mounted diodes and I haven't had a problem with it yet. Now what that's going to require is your soldering iron to have a fine tip. If you guys don't have one for this type of soldering, I would highly recommend it because it will get the exact amount of heat in the exact location you want. Next, with these little LEDs, I don't think it's washed out. Do that. The LEDs are marked. Green, which is on this side, is always the ground, and then the blank is the positive. So when you flip it over, there's a little arrow on the back. I think you guys can see that. That little arrow is always pointing towards ground right here. So what we're going to do is you're going to want to turn on your soldering iron, and you want to turn the temperature way down. I usually have mine set anywhere from 600 to 650 degrees. And you just want to be very careful not to put too much heat on these. Next, usually the smaller solder, the better. As you can see, this is quite thick. I use it because that's what I have, and it works very well for that. And it also has a flux core inside, so that helps it flow a little better. All right, now what you're going to want to do is come in, get a little bit solder on the tip, then you're going to want to touch it right on the metal, just like that. Let's clean it up a little bit. It sticks the tape fairly easy. There we go. Then do the same thing to the other side. Get some on the tip, and then tap the tip. And what you want to do, you really don't even want the tip of your soldering iron to touch the terminal. What you want to do is get the solder on the tip, a good amount of it, then you touch the solder to the terminal and allow the solder to heat it up. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the heat back up to about 750 odd degrees. Okay, what I did is I swapped the head on my soldering iron out. I swapped it for a bigger head, because what I'm about to do next is going to need a lot of heat, and I don't have to worry about damaging the LEDs. I will not be touching it with the iron or even with solder directly like I did. So I use magnet wire, okay? And this is 30 gauge magnet wire. The thing I like about this, it's a solid copper core that is coated with a plastic type substance. They call it magnet wire because they tend to use these around magnets. They'll wrap magnets, put them inside, well, old VCRs, things of that nature, motors. But the nice thing about this is it's a constant solid coating all the way across, so you don't have to worry about shorts. And whenever you need to solder to it, you hit it with your soldering iron and the plastic sheathing will melt away, exposing the bare copper. And it's nice because if you need to have a connection right on the tip, you need to have a connection in the middle, you simply wrap the wire around itself right here, then hit it, and the plastic will melt and it'll solder it together while not disturbing the rest of the sheathing along. And that's what I really like about this stuff. Okay, now what I do is I take my solder, clean off my tip, and I load it up. Okay, then I take my soldering iron and my magnet wire, and I run my magnet wire through the solder. Yeah, you can see it on there. And you can see how the plastic sheathing melted away and it exposed the bare wire. Then what I do, get a little bit more solder on the tip. I come down here, I set the magnet wire on the LED, but leaving a good amount overhanging. Set it on there, and then I touch the tip with my soldering iron. What this will do there you go. Now what that did is I touched the hottest part of my iron to the tip of the wire. As the wire heated up, it melted the solder on the wire and it melted the solder on the LED. And once I see that it starts to melt, I move the iron and I let it cool down. Okay, so I'm going to stick it back. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the ground. There we go. Okay. Now, as you can see, holding the LED with my tweezers, I've created a nice tight bond, and I have not damaged the LED. So now, I'm going to cut off just however much you want to use. I usually tend to make sure I have plenty of leftover, but also not waste my wire. Then, this is the back section. You're going to come through and put more solder, tip of your iron. And now, all you want to do is just slightly melt the plastic, or however much you want. You don't need to melt as much. Sometimes, as you can see right there, it doesn't want to melt. I don't fully know the term by it, but the solder just doesn't want to work very well. So I clean my tip off again, add more solder, and it usually melts. If it keeps giving me a hard time, I'll actually cut it and do it some more. But I've only noticed that when I'm soldering LEDs. It's when I'm creating these ends. So now that that's done, I'm going to turn on my power supply. I have it set to 3.2 volts. Do this. Stick the LED on the tape. And I do this to all my LEDs to test and make sure they work. Painter's tape is good, but sometimes difficult to keep the LEDs taped down. Alright, again, I'm at 3.2 volts. Connect the ground. Connect the positive. And as you can see, I have power running to my LED. And this is a warm white LED, as you guys can see. Alright, so that's how I solder it. And now, the last thing I do is you can see there's a little bit of wire overhang. I lay it flat on its back. I take my X-Acto knife, I put it flush up against the LED, cut it. It cuts the wires. Now this is ready to go. And I can put the resistor wherever I want in the line. I can, and see, and I can make it as long as I want or as short as I want to put it where I need it. And the reason I like this, I'm kind of OCD, and I prefer using the same size wire everywhere I go. And my problem with the pre-wired in my application is pre-wired is rubber wrapped wire. It's not a solid core, it's multi-strand wire. And when I take a solid core and plug it into multi-strand, it'll work just fine, but I don't like how it looks, so I change it out. But now that that's done, this is what I'm currently working on. This is the interior of the Runabout Rio Grande. Now that that's done, what I will do is I will take these and place them, I'll put it up here, inside these housings that I dremeled out, like that, and that's where the Lacars panels will sit. They'll sit in there like that. And the point of this is to backlight all of the Lacars panels. Just put it all through there. Put one here, one there. So this interior alone with the front pilot area and the tactical station, which this is the Rio Grande, so it's going to have the transporter pad here. Technically, they didn't have a tactical station, so I'm going to put it back here in this aft area just as a maintenance panel is what I'm going to do. So with all of these little LEDs, I have to solder 30 of these. It's going to take a long time, but I think it's really going to look very nice. Alright guys, well I want to just give you a quick look on how I solder little surface mounted LEDs together. Again, these are 0805 SMDs. They're very small, but they do give off a good deal of light, and they are very durable once you get them in place. They last a very long time. Alright guys, well if you have any other questions on how to do it, let me know.